So, I've brought a clock, and for people who are in charge of the event, it's 7:39, and by 8:39, I'm going to move from here to over there as planned. So we don't need to worry about it. That's going to happen. So you can hear me, right? This is quite, but can you see me? Because I feel obscured by these microphones. But, all right. Try to stand up straight. So I'm going to read, this is a collection of, well, I mean, you could quarrel. Are they really essays? The pointless exercise. But I'm going to read the first one and maybe another one too. This first one is called The Quest for Superiority. When I was 5 years old, I had a small room of my own with a record player and records and shelves full of books. I listened to music, I thought up different kinds of stories, and I played with paper and crayons and paint. Now I've grown up, and thank God things have mostly gone on as before. The paper, the stories, it's pretty much the same. I've been allowed to become a professional maker of art. I've become a writer, and I dwell in the mansion of arts and letters. When I was a child, I didn't know that the pieces of paper I used had been made by anybody. I certainly didn't know that almost everything I touched had been made by people who were poor, people who worked in factories or on farms or places like that. In fact, I never met anyone who worked in a factory or on a farm. I'd frequently met people who owned factories and farms because they lived all around us in the huge houses I could see from my window. Although I wasn't aware then that the houses were huge because the people who lived in them paid very low salaries to their employees while paying themselves enormous sums. Our wealthy neighbors were really like the giants in a fantastic tale. Giants who were superior to others because they could spin gold out of human suffering. Well, it turns out that I still live in the same neighborhood because that's where the Mansion of Arts and Letters is located. So I still can see giants when I look out my window, and the funny thing is that pretty much all of us in the Mansion of Arts and Letters actually live off the money we get from these giants. Isn't that funny? You know, they buy the tickets to our shows, they buy our books and paintings, they support the universities where we teach, their gifts and grants. It all comes out of the gold they've spun. And we live with them. We share the streets with them. And we're all protected by the same cops. But you see, some of the people who don't live in the neighborhood, the ones our neighbors don't pay well or treat well, some of these people are out of control. They're so miserable, so desperate, they're out of their minds. They're very threatening. So it turns out we need more than cops. We actually have a large army as well, and a Navy, and an Air Force, plus the CIA, Coast Guard, FBI, and Marines. Oi! It turned out that simply in order to be secure and protect our neighborhood, we needed an empire. I wonder is someone here playing all this music? It's terribly loud, but maybe it's only in my mind. I don't know. Hear an awful lot of music. Oh well. Some of us who live in the mansion of arts and letters are a bit touchy about our relationship to our wealthy neighbors. Bob, for example. He's a painter who lives down the hall from me. He refuses to bow to them when they pass him in the street. But you know, they buy his paintings just the same. For me, though, it's my relationship with the poor people outside the neighborhood that I sometimes brood about in the middle of the night. It's the fact that so many of them are in agony that's in a way thought-provoking. One evening last week, a friend and I went to a somewhat inexpensive restaurant, and the waiter who served us was in such a state of agitation or anxiety about God knows what that he didn't even look at us. And so I was thinking about the fact that in more expensive restaurants, the staff is usually trained to focus their attention on the pleasure of the diners, not on their own problems. In fact, the waiters in more expensive restaurants are invited to be friendly, amusing, to make funny remarks about their lives, to let us diners get to know them a little. But in the most expensive restaurants, the really fancy ones, we don't get to know the waiters at all. The waiters in those restaurants don't make funny remarks. They do their work with such discretion that they're barely noticed. And people compliment them by saying that they're unobtrusive. Actually, that's quite a good word for all those people whom we don't know and don't think about much, but who serve us and make the things we need and whose lives we actually dominate. The unobtrusives. And the interesting thing I've noticed is that in those very expensive restaurants, we don't talk with the waiters, but we enjoy their presence enormously. We certainly wouldn't want them to be replaced by robots or by conveyor belts that would carry our food to us while we sat in the dining room completely alone. No, we want them there, these silent waiters, these unobtrusives. It's obviously a characteristic of human beings that we like to feel superior to others. But our problem is that we're not superior. We like the sensation of being served by others and feeling superior to them. But if we're forced to get to know the people who serve us, we quickly see that they're in fact just like us. And then we become uncomfortable and scared, because if we can see that we're just the same, well, they might too. And if they did, they might become terribly, terribly angry, because why should they be serving us? So that's why we prefer not to talk to waiters. A king feels the very same way, I'd imagine. He doesn't really want to get to know his subjects, but he nonetheless enjoys the fact that he has them. He finds it enjoyable to be told, "Your Majesty, you have 10,000 subjects." And in fact, he finds it even more enjoyable to be told, "Your Majesty, you have 1,000,000 subjects," even though he may never see them. The subjects are in the background of his life. They're in the background of his life, and yet they provide the meaning of his life. Without his subjects, he wouldn't be king. Some people like to feel superior because once they were made to feel inferior. Others, including myself, were told constantly in their early days that they were superior, and now find themselves to be hopelessly addicted.